Ambassador Veltara of the Kethmar Confederation floated in the emergency council chamber, her crystalline gills fluttering with barely contained panic. The ancient chamber, carved from a single massive pearl deep beneath their capital city, had witnessed countless peaceful negotiations over the centuries. Today, it might witness their species' final moments. Through the transparent bioglass walls, she could see the distant flashes of their dying fleet engaging the Vorthak swarm high above their homeworld. Each flash meant another ship lost, another crew of brave Kethmar warriors dissolved by the enemy's terrible weapons. The orbital defense platforms, those magnificent towers of living coral that had protected their world for 1,000 years, were already falling one by one. "The outer colonies are gone," reported General Mordin, his voice heavy with defeat. His usually pristine blue skin had turned a sickly gray, and his communication tendrils drooped with exhaustion. "Kepler-7 fell this morning. The Vorthak bioships adapt to every weapon we deploy. Our energy shields are useless against their hull-melting acids." The general activated the holographic display at the chamber center. Red dots marked the systems they had lost, while yellow indicated those under attack. The green dots representing safe Kethmar worlds had shrunk to a handful around their homeworld. The map told a story of systematic annihilation. Veltara's tentacles writhed in distress as she studied the tactical readouts. In 3 standard years, the Vorthak had consumed 17 systems, their living warships growing stronger and more adaptable with each victory. The peaceful Kethmar had never faced such relentless brutality. Their weapons were designed for defense, their ships built for exploration and trade, not the kind of total warfare the Vorthak practiced. "Show me the latest battle footage from the Outer Rim," she commanded, though she dreaded what she would see. The hologram shifted to display the final moments of Kepler-7's defense. Kethmar cruisers, their hulls shimmering like soap bubbles, fired concentrated beams of pure energy at the approaching Vorthak fleet. The enemy ships absorbed the attacks, their organic hulls rippling and changing color as they adapted in real time. Then came the counterattack. Streams of corrosive bioplasma erupted from the Vorthak vessels, eating through Kethmar shields like acid through silk. Where the green death streams touched, metal dissolved and crews screamed briefly before the vacuum claimed them. Worse still were the boarding pods, living creatures that burrowed into ship hulls and released swarms of smaller organisms that consumed everything organic they found. "They're not just conquering us," whispered Council Elder Zethare, her ancient voice crackling with fear. "They're harvesting us. Our people, our technology, our very essence becomes part of their fleet." The chamber fell into heavy silence as the implications sank in. This wasn't just war, it was extinction by consumption. Every Kethmar ship that fell made the enemy stronger. Every world they lost fed the swarm's growth. "The Galactic Alliance has abandoned us," Mordin continued bitterly. "The Altarians claim they are monitoring the situation. The Centauri Republic sent thoughts and prayers. Even the warrior clans of Beta Sector refused to engage, saying the Vorthak are too dangerous to fight." Veltara closed her main eyes, her secondary vision still tracking the orbital battle through the chamber walls. Another flash, brighter than the rest, marked the death of the heavy cruiser * Peaceful Current Star. 3,000 souls, gone in an instant. "There is one option," she whispered, the words tasting like poison in her vocal chambers. "The humans." The chamber fell silent except for the distant rumble of explosions filtering down through kilometers of water. Every Kethmar knew of the Deathworlders from Sol 3, those violent primitives who had somehow clawed their way to the stars despite coming from a world that actively tried to kill them every day. The galactic community tolerated them, barely, keeping them contained in their small corner of space far from civilized systems. Elder Zethare's tentacles coiled in disgust. The humans? Those barbarians who solve every problem with explosives and violence? Who come from a world so toxic it would kill any civilized being in minutes? "They're monsters," agreed Mordin, his voice cracking with horror. "Their ships are flying weapons platforms. Their soldiers trained by fighting each other. They've turned warfare into an art form. You would invite those predators into our territory?" Veltara opened her eyes and stared at the tactical display. The Vorthak had broken through the outer defense line. Their bioships were entering the upper atmosphere, beginning the final assault on the surface cities. In the distance, she could see the first evacuation transports rising from the capital, packed with fleeing civilians. "What choice do we have?" she asked quietly. "The Vorthak will be here within hours. Our children are already in the deep shelters, but even those won't hold against their burrowing organisms. We can die as proud, civilized beings, or we can ask the galaxy's apex predators to save us." Another massive explosion shook the chamber, sending ripples through the water outside. The orbital shipyards were burning now, their twisted wreckage falling like metal rain toward the ocean surface. General Mordin straightened his shoulders, military training overriding his fear. If we're going to do this, we need to do it now. The communication array won't last much longer. Veltara made her choice, knowing it might doom her species in a different way. Send the transmission. Tell the humans we need immediate military assistance. Tell them an entire civilization is about to die. The message streaked across space toward the Terran Federation, traveling at faster-than-light speeds through the quantum communication network. It was a desperate plea from a dying civilization to the galaxy's most feared predators, carried by hope and powered by desperation. In the depths of space, humanity was about to receive a call for help. And when Deathworlders answered such calls, they didn't come alone. Admiral James Mitchell stood on the bridge of the TNS Devastation studying the alien distress call with cold blue eyes. The massive command center stretched out before him, a symphony of tactical displays, weapon readouts, and communication arrays that would have impressed even the most advanced alien civilizations. Around him, the command crew of the human dreadnought maintained their stations with military precision that came from years of training on humanity's harsh homeworld. The bridge hummed with quiet efficiency as dozens of officers processed incoming data streams. Holographic displays showed fleet positions, ammunition counts, and power distribution across the ship's massive hull. The Devastation was over 2 kilometers long, its armored hull bristling with weapons that other species considered excessive for any single vessel. "Sir, we've confirmed the transmission is genuine," reported Commander Lisa Thompson, his tactical officer. Her fingers danced across her console, pulling up everything the human database contained about the Kethmar Confederation. The Kethmar Confederation is facing extinction from something called the Vorthak Swarm. Intelligence suggests they're some kind of biomechanical species that adapts to conventional weapons. Mitchell nodded grimly as he reviewed the data. The peaceful aquatic aliens had been model galactic citizens for centuries, never starting conflicts, always willing to negotiate. Their technology was impressive but focused on exploration and trade rather than warfare. Against an aggressive species like this Vorthak swarm, they stood no chance. The human fleet had been conducting training exercises in the Outer Rim for the past month. Of course, when humans called something a training exercise, other species got nervous. These particular drills involved live-fire testing of antimatter torpedoes, gravitational mine deployment, and something the weapons department cheerfully called stellar disruption protocols. The kind of weapons that made alien diplomats file formal complaints about humanity's excessive military preparations. Now they had a real target. "Show me everything we have on the Vorthak," Mitchell commanded. The main display shifted to show grainy intelligence footage captured by long-range scouts. The Vorthak ships looked more like giant sea creatures than spacecraft, their hulls pulsing with organic life. Tentacle-like weapons extended from their sides, firing streams of what appeared to be living acid. Most disturbing were the footage clips showing their ships literally consuming defeated vessels, absorbing the metal and technology into their own hulls. Biological adaptation capability, Thompson continued her briefing. They encounter a weapon type, survive the initial attack, and develop immunity within hours. Standard energy weapons become useless after the first engagement. Kinetic weapons show limited effectiveness as their hulls can harden on demand. Lieutenant Robert Hayes looked up from the navigation station, his face pale. "Sir, if they adapt to everything, how do we fight them?" Mitchell's smile was cold as winter on Earth's polar regions. "Simple, Lieutenant. We don't give them time to adapt. And we hit them with so many different weapon types simultaneously that their biological systems overload trying to counter them all." He turned to address the entire bridge crew. "Signal the fleet, Commander. All ships, prepare for combat deployment. We leave in 6 hours." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as officers began implementing his orders. Communication arrays reached out across space to contact the scattered human battle groups. Engineering departments started warming up the massive fusion reactors that powered humanity's war machines. Weapon systems that had been on standby suddenly came online, their targeting computers beginning long-range calculations. "Sir, how many ships should we take?" asked Lieutenant Hayes from the navigation station, his voice carefully neutral. Mitchell paused, considering the tactical requirements. A typical human response to a galactic crisis might involve a single battle group, maybe 20 ships if the situation was serious. Other species usually sent token forces, more for show than actual military effectiveness. But something about this situation, about an entire species facing extinction, demanded a different approach. All of them, Lieutenant. 12 dreadnoughts, 40 destroyers, 6 assault carriers, and their full complement. If someone's threatening to wipe out an entire species, they're about to learn why the galaxy fears humanity. The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of electronics and the distant throb of the ship's engines. Hayes swallowed hard, his fingers already working to calculate jump coordinates for the largest human fleet deployment in galactic history. Thompson whistled softly. "Sir, that's over 300 ships total including escorts and support vessels. The galactic press will have a field day with this." "Let them talk," Mitchell replied, watching as status reports flooded in from across the fleet. "We're not doing this for press coverage. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do." The next few hours transformed the human fleet from a training exercise into a weapon of galactic liberation. Ammunition was transferred between ships, with each vessel loading specialized rounds designed for different combat scenarios. The assault carriers launched their fighter wings for final systems checks, filling local space with sleek interceptors and heavy bombers. Supply ships distributed emergency rations and medical supplies, preparing for extended combat operations. Most impressive were the dreadnoughts themselves. Each massive vessel carried enough firepower to level a small moon, their weapons ranging from conventional railguns to exotic matter disruptors that technically violated several galactic warfare treaties. The humans had signed those treaties but included so many loopholes and exceptions that they were practically meaningless. As the final preparations completed, Mitchell stood before the main viewing port, watching his fleet arrange itself into combat formation. Hundreds of ships stretching across thousands of kilometers of space, their hulls gleaming with predatory purpose. It was a sight that would have terrified any alien observer, a reminder of why humanity had earned its fearsome reputation. Within 6 hours, the largest human battle fleet ever assembled began its burn toward Kethmar space, their faster-than-light drives carving holes in reality itself. The Admiral's only concern wasn't whether they could win against this Vorthak swarm, it was whether they'd leave any enemies alive to surrender. The Deathworlders were coming, and they were bringing their fury. The galaxy was about to witness what happened when humanity decided someone needed saving. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kethmar system in a spectacular display of controlled violence. Reality tore open like fabric as 300 ships materialized simultaneously, their massive hulls throwing off waves of exotic radiation from their faster-than-light drives. The transition from hyperspace always caused sensor interference, but as the static cleared, the bridge crew of the TNS Devastation found themselves staring at a nightmare. The Kethmar homeworld, once a jewel of crystalline spires and floating cities, was dying before their eyes. Hundreds of Vorthak bioships swarmed around the planet like metallic parasites, their hulls pulsing with sickly bioluminescent patterns. The enemy vessels looked more like deep-sea creatures than spacecraft, with tentacle-like weapon appendages that writhed and twisted as they fired streams of corrosive death toward the surface. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Margaret Wells at the sensor station, her voice barely audible over the bridge's electronic hum. "There must be 1,000 of them." The tactical display painted a picture of systematic destruction. Orbital defense platforms, those magnificent towers of living coral that had protected the Kethmar homeworld for centuries, were dissolving under concentrated acid bombardments. Below them, the planet's crystalline cities were burning with an eerie green flame as the Vorthak bioweapons ate through their foundations. Admiral Mitchell gripped the railing as he watched the slaughter unfold. The Kethmar defense fleet, what remained of it, was putting up a brave but hopeless fight. Their sleek ships, designed for exploration and peaceful trade, darted between the much larger Vorthak vessels like minnows attacking sharks. Their elegant beam weapons painted beautiful streams of blue energy across space, striking the enemy bioships with concentrated force. But the Vorthak simply absorbed every attack. Mitchell watched in fascination and horror as the enemy hulls rippled and changed color where the energy beams struck them. Within minutes, the same weapons that had initially caused damage were bouncing harmlessly off adaptive armor that had learned to counter them. "They're learning from every shot," observed Commander Thompson, her tactical readouts showing the enemy's rapid adaptation in real time. "Each hit makes them stronger against that weapon type. No wonder the aliens are losing." A Kethmar cruiser exploded in the distance, its graceful hull dissolving under a concentrated barrage of bioplasma. The crew of 3,000 was gone in seconds, their screams cut short by the vacuum of space. More enemy ships were converging on the remaining defenders, their tentacle weapons reaching out like the arms of hungry predators. "Well, they haven't met humans yet," Mitchell replied coldly, his voice carrying the promise of violence that had made humanity feared across the galaxy. He turned to address his weapons officer. All ships, weapons free. Target the largest concentration of enemy vessels. Kinetic kill vehicles, maximum velocity. The order rippled through the human fleet with deadly efficiency. Across 300 warships, magnetic rail systems that had been charging during their hyperspace journey reached full power. The dreadnoughts, massive vessels bristling with weapons that other species considered excessive, aligned their primary batteries toward the enemy swarm. The human dreadnoughts opened fire simultaneously in a display of coordinated destruction that would have impressed the war gods of ancient Earth. Tungsten slugs, each one weighing several tons, were accelerated to 15% of light speed by magnetic rails powerful enough to drain a city's power grid. The rounds streaked across space like invisible death, their passage marked only by the faint distortion of spacetime around their relativistic mass. The Vorthak bioships, evolved over millennia to absorb and adapt to energy weapons, had no defense against simple kinetic force delivered at such incredible velocity. The first salvo struck the enemy formation like the fist of an angry god. 30 bioships simply ceased to exist, their organic hulls crumpling like wet paper against tungsten traveling at relativistic speeds. The impacts released energy equivalent to nuclear weapons, turning proud alien warships into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The remaining Vorthak swarm reeled from the unexpected assault. Their biomechanical minds, accustomed to gradual adaptation and defensive warfare, struggled to process this new threat. These attackers didn't use energy weapons that could be absorbed and countered. Instead, they threw chunks of metal so fast that the laws of physics themselves became weapons. The alien formation began to shift, abandoning their assault on the Kethma homeworld to face this new threat. Bioships that had been methodically destroying the planet's defenses suddenly found themselves under attack by an enemy that fought with a brutality they had never encountered. Enemy ships are attempting to adapt, reported Wells, her sensors tracking the changes in Vorthak hull composition. They are hardening their forward sections, growing additional armor plating. Mitchell's smile was predatory, the expression of an apex predator that had found worthy prey. Then we'll hit them from behind. Launch all fighters. Show these bastards what human creativity looks like. Across the human fleet, assault carriers opened their launch bays like flowers blooming in reverse. Hundreds of fighter craft poured into space, their sleek forms designed for one purpose: killing. Each fighter carried a pilot trained on humanity's death world, warriors who had learned to fight in an environment that actively tried to murder them every day. The lead squadron was commanded by Captain Derek Reynolds, a veteran pilot whose fighter bore the scars of a dozen previous engagements. His voice crackled over the communications array as he led his wing toward the enemy formation. All fighters, this is Reaper lead. Enemy bioships are trying to adapt to kinetic weapons. Time to show them why humans don't rely on just one way to kill. Arm plasma torpedoes and prepare for close engagement. The human fighters dove into the Vorthak formation like hunting wolves, their weapon systems cycling through different ammunition types with each pass. When the enemy adapted to plasma weapons, the fighters switched to antimatter charges. When the bioships hardened against those, the humans used gravitational mines that collapsed spacetime around their targets. The battle for the Kethma homeworld had begun in earnest, and the Vorthak were about to learn a painful lesson about human warfare. While other species relied on sophisticated energy weapons and defensive strategies, humanity had turned killing into an art form. They didn't just have one way to destroy their enemies, they had hundreds. And they were just getting started. The Vorthak swarm, masters of adaptation and biological warfare for over 1,000 years, found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered in their conquest of 17 star systems. Where other species relied on elegant energy weapons and careful defensive tactics, the humans fought with a savage creativity that defied every biological logic the swarm had evolved to counter. The battle had been raging for 6 hours when the Vorthak made their first major adaptation. Their bioships, struck repeatedly by human kinetic weapons, began growing thick bone-like plates across their hulls. The organic armor spread like living metal, hardening into surfaces that could deflect even relativistic tungsten rounds. Admiral Mitchell watched the enemy adaptation with cold satisfaction from the bridge of the Asterisk Devastation Star. They are learning, he observed. Good. Now let's teach them why that won't save them. When the Vorthak hardened their hulls against kinetic weapons, the human destroyers smoothly switched to plasma bombardment. Streams of superheated matter, hot enough to melt through starship armor in seconds, lanced out from human weapon arrays. The bioships that had just adapted to solid projectiles found themselves being cooked from the inside as plasma beams cut through their organic hulls like hot knives through butter. Entire Vorthak vessels became expanding clouds of superheated gas, their screaming death throes echoing across radio frequencies. But the swarm was nothing if not adaptable. Within 30 minutes, surviving bioships began developing reflective surfaces, mirror-like skin that scattered plasma beams harmlessly into space. Their hulls rippled and changed, becoming living prisms that turned humanity's energy weapons into light shows. The humans responded by deploying hunter-killer drones, small automated craft that darted between the massive warships like angry wasps. These drones carried payloads that the galaxy had tried to ban in multiple treaties, quantum mines that collapsed space-time around their targets. When these weapons detonated, they didn't just destroy enemy ships, they erased small sections of reality itself, creating tiny black holes that consumed everything nearby before evaporating in bursts of hawking radiation. Commander David Parker led the fighter squadrons in their deadliest dance through the enemy formation. His pilots, born and raised on humanity's death world where everything from the weather to the wildlife tried to kill them daily, showed no fear as they weaved between Vorthak acid spitters and hull-melting bioweapons. Their fighters moved like extensions of their own bodies, diving and climbing through three-dimensional combat that would have overwhelmed pilots from gentler worlds. Phoenix Squadron, this is Phoenix Leader. Parker's voice crackled over the communications array, steady despite the chaos around him. Enemy ships at bearing 27 Mark IV are clustering for a counterattack. Light them up with everything we've got. The human fighters unleashed their payload in a coordinated strike that lit up the darkness of space. Micro-antimatter warheads, each one containing enough destructive force to level a city, streaked toward their targets. When matter met antimatter in the heart of the Vorthak formation, the explosions turned bioships into brief suns that burned brighter than stars for several seconds before collapsing into radioactive debris. Each antimatter detonation sent massive shockwaves through the organic fleet, disrupting the bioelectrical networks that allowed the swarm to coordinate their movements. Individual bioships began firing randomly, their targeting systems scrambled by electromagnetic pulses from the human weapons. The Vorthak tried desperately to adapt to antimatter weapons, growing specialized organs designed to contain and neutralize the exotic reactions. But before their evolutionary processes could complete the necessary changes, human ships switched tactics again. Gravitational disruptors created localized distortions in spacetime that tore bioships apart at the molecular level. Neural gas dispersal systems released clouds of engineered toxins that interfered with the swarm's biological control networks. Admiral Mitchell watched from the bridge as the once mighty swarm began to fragment under the relentless human assault. The Vorthak bioships, magnificent in their alien beauty, were dying by the hundreds as they struggled to counter weapons and tactics that changed faster than their biological systems could adapt. For the first time in their species' history, they faced an enemy that was more creative in destruction than they were in survival. "Sir, enemy ships are attempting to withdraw," reported Commander Thompson, her tactical displays showing Vorthak vessels breaking formation and fleeing toward the outer system. "They are abandoning their assault on the planet." Mitchell's expression didn't change. "Follow them," he ordered without hesitation, his voice carrying the cold finality of judgment. "Don't let a single one escape. They wanted to commit genocide against peaceful beings. Now they'll learn the price humanity charges for such crimes." The human fleet pursued the fleeing Vorthak through hyperspace itself, their faster-than-light drives allowing them to intercept enemy ships before they could reach safe distances. What had begun as a strategic withdrawal quickly became a running massacre as human destroyers appeared alongside bioships in the middle of hyperspace jumps, tearing them apart with close-range bombardments. Captain Reynolds led his fighter wing through dimensional rifts, emerging inside enemy formations before the Vorthak could react. His pilots had trained for this kind of pursuit warfare, hunting fleeing enemies through the twisted geometries of hyperspace like ancient Earth predators tracking wounded prey through dense forests. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 years, consuming entire civilizations and growing stronger with each victory, died in the cold vacuum of space. Their biomechanical minds, evolved for adaptation and survival, simply couldn't comprehend the relentless fury of creatures that had learned warfare on a world that tried to kill them every single day. The humans showed no mercy to beings that had shown none to their victims. Every Vorthak ship was hunted down and destroyed, their adaptive capabilities meaningless against an enemy that fought with tools and tactics they had never imagined. By the end of the second day, the Vorthak swarm was broken completely. The threat that had consumed 17 star systems and billions of innocent lives was eliminated by creatures they had never bothered to study or understand. In their arrogance, they had dismissed humanity as primitive Deathworlders, not worth their attention. That mistake had cost them everything. Humanity had spoken with the voice of controlled violence, and the galaxy listened in terrified silence as word of the battle spread through diplomatic channels. The Deathworlders were protectors now, and that might be more frightening than when they had been contained in their small corner of space. Ambassador Veltara floated through the debris field that had once been the mighty Vorthak swarm, her crystalline gills fluttering as she struggled to process the magnitude of destruction surrounding her. Twisted chunks of biomechanical hull drifted past her observation craft like the remains of some ancient sea monster, their organic surfaces still twitching with dying neural impulses. The space around her homeworld, which had been filled with 1,000 enemy warships just days ago, was now a graveyard of scattered metal and cooling plasma. The human fleet hung in space around her homeworld like protective steel guardians, their massive hulls still radiating heat from weapons that had fired continuously for 2 days. Each human dreadnought was larger than her people's greatest space stations, their dark armor scarred but unbroken. Weapon barrels that could level mountains were finally cooling down, no longer glowing with the terrible heat of sustained combat. The Kethmar Defense Force, what little remained of it after 3 years of desperate fighting, watched in awed silence as human engineering crews began clearing orbital debris with the same brutal efficiency they had shown in battle. Massive human salvage ships moved through the wreckage fields like mechanical whales, their powerful tractor beams pulling apart the remains of bioships that had once seemed invincible. Where Kethmar engineers would have taken months to clear such devastation, the humans were restoring safe orbital lanes in a matter of hours. Captain Benjamin Williams of the Human Engineering Corps directed the cleanup operation from his command ship, coordinating dozens of work vessels with military precision. His crews didn't just clear the debris, they analyzed every piece of Vorthak technology they found, ensuring that no adaptive organisms could survive to threaten anyone else. When they were finished, there would be nothing left of the swarm that had terrorized the galaxy for years. Ambassador Veltara, came a transmission from the human flagship, the voice calm and professional despite the magnitude of what these beings had just accomplished. "This is Admiral Mitchell. Permission to come aboard and discuss terms." Terms. The word sent ice through her circulatory system, making her tentacles curl with instinctive fear. What would these predators demand for their salvation? Throughout galactic history, military assistance always came with a price. Territory would be claimed, resources demanded, governments overthrown. The stronger species enslaved the weaker ones, that was the natural order of things. The humans had just displayed military power that dwarfed entire galactic fleets. Surely they would want to claim their prize. An hour later, Veltara found herself floating in her private diplomatic chamber, face to face with the human admiral who had just saved her species from extinction. James Mitchell was tall by Kethmar standards, his frame imposing even in the low-gravity environment of her ship. His eyes were the pale blue of Arctic ice, and she could see the kind of controlled strength that came from a lifetime of command decisions. But when he spoke, his voice carried an unexpected gentleness that made her secondary heart skip beats. "Ambassador, my sincere condolences for your losses during this conflict. The Vorthak were a cancer on this galaxy, consuming innocent civilizations for their own growth. I'm genuinely glad we could help end their threat." Veltara's diplomatic training kicked in, though her voice barely rose above a whisper. "What do you require as payment for this assistance, Admiral? Our databases show that military interventions typically involve territorial concessions or resource agreements." Mitchell seemed genuinely surprised by the question, his pale eyebrows rising as if the concept hadn't occurred to him. "Payment? Ambassador, you asked for help. We gave it. That's what civilized people do when others are facing extinction." "But surely your government expects something in return," Veltara pressed, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Territory? Trade rights? Military bases in our systems? Your fleet could demand anything from us right now." The human admiral shook his head slowly, a small smile playing across his features. "2 things, Ambassador. Updated star charts of this region so we can respond faster to future threats. And a promise that if your people ever face extinction again, you'll call us first instead of waiting until the last moment." Veltara stared at him in complete disbelief, her main eyes widening while her secondary vision organs focused intently on his face, searching for signs of deception. That's all you want? Navigation data and a communication agreement." "That's all," Mitchell confirmed. "We're not conquerors, Ambassador. We're protectors. The strong have a responsibility to shield the weak from those who would destroy them." The Admiral stood to leave, his imposing figure moving with surprising grace in the chamber's artificial gravity. He paused at the chamber door, turning back to face her one final time. "The strong protect the weak, Ambassador. It's not about payment or conquest. It's about doing what's right, because if we don't stand up for those who can't protect themselves, then what kind of people are we?" As the human fleet prepared to depart over the following hours, Veltara watched from her observation deck with a mixture of gratitude and growing understanding. The engineering ships finished their cleanup operations and docked with their motherships. Fighter squadrons that had torn through the Vorthak formations like avenging spirits returned to their carriers in perfect formation. The massive dreadnoughts that had shattered a galactic threat aligned themselves for departure, their hulls gleaming under the light of the Kethmar sun. The Deathworlders who had terrified the galaxy for decades were not the conquerors or slavers that everyone had assumed them to be. They were protectors, guardians who wielded their terrible strength to shield the innocent from those who would consume them. Their weapons were not tools of conquest but instruments of justice, turned against only those who threatened the peaceful. And somehow, that realization was more frightening than their weapons had ever been. The galaxy's apex predators had revealed themselves to be its greatest defenders, and that changed everything about how civilized species would interact with humanity going forward. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace in a coordinated departure that lit up local space with the brilliant flashes of their faster-than-light drives. One moment they were there, 300 ships of war hanging in protective formation around the Kethmar homeworld. The next moment they were gone, disappeared into the star-filled void as if they had never existed. But their message remained crystal clear throughout the galaxy as news of the battle spread through diplomatic channels. Those who threatened innocent civilizations would face humanity's wrath. The Deathworlders had become the galaxy's self-appointed guardians, and they had the power to back up that role. The Kethmar Confederation was safe, their people could return from the deep shelters and rebuild their shattered cities. But more than that, the galaxy itself was a little bit safer now, protected by beings who had turned their savage nature toward the defense of others. Admiral Mitchell's final words echoed in Veltara's mind as she watched the last traces of hyperspace distortion fade from her senses: the strong protect the weak. It was a simple concept that would reshape galactic civilization forever.